Hello and welcome to Sharing the Light. We are glad that you have joined us for this segment. And today we're going to be talking about gay by God. And as we look at the topic of gay by God, of course, we're here with our senior pastor, the Reverend Dr. Durrell Watkins of the Sunshine Cathedral. So we're going to launch right into this topic today of gay by God. What do you mean, gay by God? That sounds like one of those southern hats I would see, born by grace and gay by God or something.
Well, it is. I mean, at a conference a long time ago, many years ago, at one of our denomination's general conferences, the Reverend Elder Darling Gardner ended a sermon with the line, gay by God, proud by choice. And I thought, well, that's just wonderful. And that stuck with me for a long time. I mean, that must have been in the 90s. But that phrase has stuck with me forever. You know, gay by God, proud by choice. And so that's what we're talking about, is that same gender loving people, gay people, lesbian people, bisexual people, that people who love people of the same gender, that is, of course, their orientation. That's who they are meant to be. That's who they're supposed to be. And when people live authentically as the people they are meant to be, that's when they're happy. That's when they're productive. That's when they are their best selves. We see so much misery when people try to be something that they're not. And not just because they're curious and want to try something new, you know, oh, let me try this straight thing. But because they're ashamed of who they are, because they've been told that who they are is bad or inferior or evil. And so they start out with self-loathing and shame, and then they add to that the lie of trying to present as something that they aren't. And so they have this shame, they have this guilt, they have this self-loathing, they have this untruth. Well, there's no way to be happy in the midst of all that mess. And as you carry that around longer and longer, you become emotionally and sometimes physically unhealthy. And we see people making some really bad choices with their lives, maybe becoming addicted to substances to sort of dull the pain or whatever. And so it's sort of a mess. And people who are able to say, I am who I am, I am the way I'm supposed to be, doesn't mean that I don't make mistakes, doesn't mean that I don't have room to grow, but who I am is good, and who I am is part of the wonderful diversity of life. And when you can start from that premise, then you can grow, and you can get healthier, and you can make good choices, and you can be happier. But you can't have any of that as long as you're ashamed of who you are and compound that by lying about who you are. And so the idea that we're gay by God, that this is, you know, the Apostle Paul said, by the grace of God, I am what I am. And I think that should be sort of the mantra for all same gender loving people. This isn't a mistake, this isn't an accident, this isn't a defect. It's by the grace of God that I am what I am. The writer of the book of 1 John said that God is love, and whoever lives in love lives in God. Same gender loving people, if they are living in love, if they are living in integrity, then they have a wonderful life available to them, and that their love is as divine as any love. And so we want to really get across to people that they are gay by God. They are lesbian by God. They are straight by God. They are bisexual by God. They are who they are and what they are, because that is part of the wonderful divine diversity of life. God looks at all that is created and calls it all very good. And if we can just start with that and feel better about ourselves, whoever we are, then we're going to treat each other better, we're going to feel better, we're going to be happier, we're going to be healthier, and we're going to have a better world then as a result. But it starts by knowing that we are what we are. By the grace of God, we are what we are.
You know, always that simple question, or that person somewhere who is always struggling with this what seems like very simple and basic thing, that yes, we are gay by God. You take the gay part, you put it in one compartment. You take the God part, you put it in one compartment. People seem to be okay as long as those two things are kind of separated out. Right. I do this over here, I'm fine. I do God over here, I'm okay. But we do know that there is that concept of, you know, that we are integrated. We're all a part of who we are. What do you say to the people who continue to struggle, even knowing what we know today, even with quote, politics being what they are today, religion being what, not religion, but churches being what churches are today? What do we say to that person who continues to struggle with this concept that living an integrated life, that it is okay?
Well, the people who continue to promote heterosexism and homophobia, that is a political agenda. There's always in our society, we have always, this has been a defect and we need to correct it, is that we have always had to have an other. Mm-hmm. We've always had to have an enemy, and that enemy isn't just someone we disagree with. That enemy is just vile. That enemy is to his or her core evil. That enemy is a threat to all that is good and holy and decent. That enemy is going to keep children from growing up to be healthy and happy. That enemy is a threat to puppies and kittens. That enemy is a threat to world peace. That enemy wants to do mean things to your grandma. That enemy is just vile and subhuman. Now, who that enemy is, once that enemy insists upon being treated with dignity and respect and being seen as human, it's just replaced with another enemy. That enemy has been immigrants. There was a time, and I mean, our country's pretty young still, but in the not too distant, where if you were from Italy or Ireland or Poland, you were categorized in a way, and Eastern European and Western European and Southern European immigrants finally sort of gained, they're just part of the fabric of the culture. But then there were immigrants from other places, and then beyond immigrants, there were religions. There was Judaism for a long time. Islam now sort of gets a lot of prejudice. Communism was it for a long time. During the Cold War. There aren't really that many communist countries left. I mean, it's not a big topic of discussion. But gays, they're there. So it's always somebody. There's always somebody, and usually the somebody eventually will prove that they are as human as everyone else. But we haven't learned that lesson yet, that we're all made in the divine image, and so we just keep replacing it with a new enemy, a new enemy, a new enemy. So there is that political agenda of we need an enemy to feel better about ourselves, and that's something that we have to create. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, for people who are listening to this and maybe struggling with that, we certainly encourage you to find maybe in your area a local Metropolitan Community Church to attend, and or another positive and affirming gay-friendly church for you to attend as well. We can really explore these topics in a very deep, meaneful relationship.
The
way.
Quakers, the Unitarian Universalists, the New Thought churches, some Episcopal churches. I mean, there are a lot of Reform Judaism and Reconstructionist Judaism. There are places that will welcome you. And affirm you and love you for who you are, and of course we think that Metropolitan Community Churches (MCC) leads the way in that. I do want to say this about God is that, and we'll get hate mail about this. We'll get hate mail about this after we have forgotten doing this segment. A year or two from now, someone will discover this on YouTube, and they will because that's how this works. No matter what we talk about, this is the topic that, people get furious and mean. Nasty. Sometimes they want one mean line will not be enough. They will have to post for days at a time. More meanness, more meanness. How dare you say that, that God can even tolerate the sight of you. I have a friend in Texas whose family was very anti-gay, and of course he came out as gay. And he had this wonderful retort to his family's religious bias and anti-gay prejudice. Because the family just said it boiled down to this. They were so afraid that God hated what he was. And they were so afraid that God would punish him forever. Basically, that he would be cut off from God. Hell. He would go to hell. There is, first of all, that doesn't make sense. That God would punish you for being who and what you are. Doesn't make sense. And that God would punish you for who you love. Doesn't make sense. But sometimes religion doesn't make sense. We get crazy with our religion sometimes. But he's had this most wonderful response. He said, I deserve the kind of family that if God was so mean and evil as to send me to hell for who I love, I deserve the kind of family who would go to hell with me. I deserve the kind of family that would love me regardless, unconditionally, even if God couldn't. And that has always stuck with me. The other thing that's always stuck with me is that when I came out to my grandmother when I was a teenager, how unconditionally loving she was. She had, up until that moment, always assumed that gays and lesbians were somehow not good. But when she knew that someone she loved found the courage to tell her that truth, her response wasn't to condemn. Her response was to apologize for anything she might have ever said that was hurtful. And that just sort of fixed it for me in that instant. That God had to be as good as my grandmother, or God didn't get to be my God. And so once we believe in ourselves, we believe in a better God. We are made in the image and likeness of God. If we have a mean God, a judgmental God, a condemning God, we'll never be better than that God. Right. We will never be better than our God. And so if we want to be better people, we've got to have a better God, a more loving God, a more generous God, a more inclusive God. And as we let God be bigger, we become bigger, and that's only good for all of us.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us on this segment of Gay by God, and thank you for joining us on this segment of Sharing the Light. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for another great episode of Sharing the Light. Tell your friends about this online ministry, and when you're in Southeast Florida, make sure you worship with us on a Sunday at the 9 a.m., the 10:30 a.m., or the 6 p.m. service. And now for a final word from our senior pastor, the Reverend Dr. Durrell Watkins.
Email me at durrell@sunshinecathedral.net if you have a religious question or if you'd like to subscribe to our daily devotional magazine, Spirit and Truth. We'll send it anywhere in the United States for an annual donation of any size. You can also email us prayer requests, or you can make donations on our website, www.sunshinecathedral.org. You'll also want to check out our great performing arts series, religious education classes, conferences, and other exciting activities. For now, we wish you many blessings on your spiritual journey.